The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was getting ready for work in my small apartment in Portland, Oregon. I'd been rushing around trying to find my car keys and finish my coffee before heading to the elementary school, where I taught third grade, when my phone buzzed with a message from Dad. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about the family reunion next month. Given everything that's happened, your mother and I think it would be best if you didn't attend this year. We want to keep things peaceful for everyone." I stared at the screen, reading the words 3 times before they fully sank in. My father, the man who had raised me, who had walked me down the aisle at my wedding just 2 years ago, was uninviting me from our annual family gathering because of my recent divorce. The everything that's happened he referred to was my decision to leave my husband Marcus after discovering his affair with a coworker. In my family's conservative small town of Bend, Oregon, divorce was still seen as a personal failure, a breaking of sacred vows that reflected poorly on a woman's character. Never mind that Marcus had been the one to betray our marriage. Somehow my choice to leave rather than work things out had made me the family disappointment. I sat down heavily on my couch, still in my teaching clothes, and tried to process what this meant. The Henderson family reunion had been a tradition for over 30 years, held every summer at my grandparents' farm outside Bend. It was where cousins reconnected, where family stories were shared over barbecue and homemade pie, where 3 generations gathered to celebrate our shared history. It was where I belonged, or where I thought I belonged. My hands were shaking slightly as I typed my response. Understood. That single word carried more weight than my father could have imagined. It wasn't just acknowledgement of his message. It was understanding that my family valued appearances over truth, peace over justice, and tradition over supporting a daughter who had shown the courage to leave an unfaithful husband. The backstory of my divorce was complicated, but the facts were simple. Marcus and I had met in college, married young, and spent 5 years building what I thought was a solid partnership. I'd supported him through graduate school, celebrated his promotion to regional sales manager, and ignored the growing signs that something was wrong in our relationship. The late nights, the unexplained phone calls, the way he'd started criticizing everything from my appearance to my career choice. I'd rationalized it all as stress from his demanding job. The truth came out in the most cliched way possible. I'd gone to surprise him at his office with lunch and found him with Rebecca, his 23-year-old assistant, in a position that left no room for innocent explanations. The confrontation that followed revealed that their affair had been going on for 8 months, complete with weekend getaways that he'd claimed were work conferences. When I filed for divorce, my family's reaction had been swift and disappointing. Instead of rallying around their daughter and sister, they'd immediately begun suggesting that I should try counseling, that marriage was about forgiveness, that perhaps I hadn't been meeting Marcus's needs as a wife. My mother had actually said, "Honey, all men make mistakes. The strong women learn to forgive and move forward." The implication was clear. Staying in a marriage with a cheating husband was strength, leaving was weakness. My younger brother Jake had been the most vocal about his disapproval. "You're breaking up the family," he'd said during our last conversation. "Marcus made a mistake, but divorce affects everyone. Think about how this makes us all look." How it makes us all look. That phrase summed up everything wrong with my family's value system. They were more concerned about their reputation in our small community than about my happiness or well-being. They wanted me to stay married to a man who had betrayed me because divorce was messy and embarrassing and reflected poorly on how they'd raised me. I'd moved to Portland 6 months ago, partly for a fresh start and partly to put some distance between myself and the constant pressure to reconcile with Marcus. I'd found a job at a wonderful elementary school, made new friends who supported my decision to prioritize my self-respect over social expectations, and slowly begun rebuilding my life as a single woman. But I'd still hoped that my family would come around, that they'd see how much happier and healthier I was on my own. I'd imagined walking into the family reunion with my head held high, showing them that I was thriving, that leaving Marcus had been the right choice for me. Instead, I was being told I wasn't welcome. The rest of that Tuesday passed in a blur of teaching 8-year-olds about fractions and helping with playground disputes. But Dad's text message lingered in the back of my mind like a persistent headache. During my lunch break, I called my best friend Emma, who had been my anchor throughout the divorce process. "He actually uninvited you?" Emma's voice was incredulous. "Sarah, that's incredibly cruel. You're his daughter." "I think that's exactly the problem," I said, picking at my sandwich without much appetite. "I'm his daughter, and daughters are supposed to reflect well on their families. Divorcing a successful husband because he cheated apparently doesn't fit that image. What are you going to do?" It was a good question. Part of me wanted to fight back, to call Dad and demand an explanation, to argue my case and insist on my right to attend a family gathering. Part of me wanted to show up anyway, to force them to confront their hypocrisy in person. But the larger part of me, the part that had grown stronger and wiser over the past year, realized that this was actually a gift. My family had shown me exactly where I stood in their priorities, and I didn't have to waste any more energy trying to earn acceptance that would always be conditional on my willingness to conform to their expectations. "I'm going to do exactly what I said I'd do," I told Emma. "I'm going to understand, and then I'm going to make some choices about what family really means to me." That evening, I opened my laptop and began researching something I'd been considering for months: a volunteer teaching position with an international education nonprofit. I'd been hesitant to apply because it would mean leaving the country for a year, leaving behind any chance of reconciling with my family. But as I read about opportunities to teach English in rural schools in Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Peru, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: excitement about my future. If my family wanted to exclude me from their gathering because I'd chosen self-respect over social conformity, then perhaps it was time to build a new kind of family, one based on shared values, mutual support, and genuine love rather than conditional acceptance. I filled out the application that night, wrote my essay about wanting to make a meaningful difference in children's lives while experiencing a new culture, and hit submit before I could second-guess myself. My father had expected his text message to shame me into silence, to make me reconsider my choices, and perhaps even reach out to Marcus about reconciliation. He'd expected me to argue, to plead, to demonstrate how much I needed their approval. Instead, I was about to show him what understood really meant. 3 weeks passed without any contact from my family, which was unusual but not entirely surprising. In the past, whenever there had been tension between us, Mom would typically call within a few days to smooth things over with some variation of, "You know your father means well," or "He's just worried about you." This time, the silence stretched on, confirming my suspicion that the decision to exclude me hadn't been made lightly or in a moment of anger. It was a calculated choice designed to send a message. During those 3 weeks, I threw myself into my work with renewed energy. My third graders were preparing for their end-of-year presentations, and I found genuine joy in watching them gain confidence as they practiced speaking in front of their classmates. There was something healing about being around children who approached challenges with curiosity rather than judgment, who celebrated each other's successes without calculating social costs. "Mrs. Henderson," my student Lily said after class one Friday, "you seem different lately. Happy different." Out of the mouths of babes. The 8-year-old had noticed something that my family had apparently missed: that I was thriving in my new life, not just surviving. "Thank you, Lily. I think I'm learning to be proud of who I am." "My mom says that's the most important thing," Lily replied with the wisdom that children sometimes possess. "She says if you don't like yourself, nobody else can fix that for you." That afternoon, I received an email that changed everything. I'd been accepted for the teaching position in Costa Rica starting in September. The program would place me in a rural school outside San Jose, where I'd teach English to children from low-income families while living with a host family and learning Spanish. It was exactly the kind of adventure I'd dreamed about, but never had the courage to pursue. I stared at the acceptance email for a long time, feeling a mixture of excitement and terror. This wasn't just about taking a job. It was about choosing a completely different life, one that prioritized personal growth and meaningful contribution over social approval and family expectations. That evening, I called Emma to share the news. "Sarah, this is incredible," she practically shouted into the phone. "You're going to love it. Remember how much you enjoyed our Spanish classes in college? And working with kids who really need what you have to offer. It's going to be amazing." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "What if I'm making a huge mistake? What if I'm just running away from my problems?" "Honey, running toward something you're passionate about isn't the same as running away from something difficult. You've already dealt with the difficult stuff: the divorce, your family's reaction, rebuilding your life. This is about moving forward, not backward." Emma was right, but accepting the position would mean burning bridges with my family that might never be rebuilt. Once I moved to Costa Rica, there would be no chance of showing up to next year's family reunion, no opportunity to gradually work my way back into their good graces. But as I thought about it more, I realized that was exactly the point. I didn't want to spend years trying to earn back acceptance from people who had withdrawn their love because I'd refused to stay in an unhappy marriage. I wanted to build a life with people who valued courage, integrity, and personal growth, values that my family seemed to have forgotten. On Monday morning, I formally accepted the position and began the process of preparing for my departure. I would finish the school year in June, spend the summer getting ready, and leave for Costa Rica in early September. The timing was perfect. I'd missed the family reunion by choice rather than exclusion, but I wasn't ready to tell my family about my decision yet. Something held me back, some instinct that the timing wasn't right for that conversation. The answer came 2 weeks later, in the form of a phone call from my cousin Rachel, who lived in Seattle and had always been more like a sister to me than a cousin. Rachel and I had grown up together, shared secrets and dreams, and maintained our close relationship even as the rest of the family had become more judgmental and rigid over the years. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something," Rachel said, her voice careful and concerned. "I just got off the phone with Uncle David, and I'm really upset about what's happening." Uncle David was my father, and Rachel's tone suggested she'd heard about my uninvitation to the reunion. "What did he tell you?" "He said you wouldn't be coming to the reunion because you're going through a difficult phase and need time to reconsider your priorities." "Sarah, that's not what happened, is it?" I felt a surge of anger and relief. Anger at my father's manipulation of the truth, and relief that someone in my family was actually asking for my side of the story. "No, Rachel, that's not what happened at all." I told her about Dad's text message, about being uninvited because my divorce was too controversial for the family gathering. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds before Rachel spoke again, and I could hear tears in her voice. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I can't believe they're doing this to you. You know what? I'm not going either." "Rachel, you don't have to do that. I don't want you to sacrifice your relationship with the family because of me." "It's not a sacrifice," she said firmly. "It's a choice. And if Uncle David can make choices about who's welcome based on his personal opinions, then I can make choices about what kind of family gatherings I want to attend." Over the next few days, I learned that Rachel hadn't kept our conversation private. She'd called her parents, my aunt and uncle, and explained the real reason I wouldn't be at the reunion. She'd also reached out to our other cousins, sharing her decision not to attend and explaining why. The response was swift and unexpected. My cousin Michael called to say he was disgusted by my father's behavior and wouldn't be attending either. Cousin Jennifer sent a long text about how disappointed she was in the family's treatment of me. Even my elderly great-aunt Martha, the family matriarch who rarely got involved in drama, called to express her disapproval of excluding me. By the end of the week, nearly half the extended family had decided to boycott the reunion in solidarity with me. What should have been a gathering of 30-plus people was rapidly shrinking to a small group consisting mainly of my parents, my brother Jake and his wife, and a few family members who either didn't know the full story or didn't want to get involved. The irony was perfect. My father's attempt to preserve family harmony by excluding me had created the biggest family rift in decades. His plan to avoid controversy had generated exactly the kind of drama and division he'd claimed to be preventing. When Dad finally called me on Thursday evening, his voice was tight with frustration and something that might have been regret. "Sarah, I don't know what you've been telling people, but you're causing a lot of problems for this family." "I haven't been telling people anything, Dad. But when they ask why I'm not coming, I'm not going to lie to protect your feelings. This has gotten way out of hand. Maybe we can work something out. Maybe you could come for just part of the day, keep things low-key." The offer was too little, too late, and we both knew it. "Dad, you made your position clear. You said I wasn't welcome because my divorce was too controversial." "I understood that message perfectly. I never said you weren't welcome. I said it might be better if—" "Dad, I kept your text message. Would you like me to read it back to you?" The silence told me everything I needed to know. He'd expected me to quietly accept his rejection, to disappear without causing any inconvenience to his plans. He'd never imagined that his decision would have consequences for anyone other than me. "What do you want, Sarah? What will it take to fix this?" It was the question I'd been waiting for, and I finally had an answer. "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to understand that excluding family members because their life choices don't match your expectations is not acceptable. And I want you to understand that I'm not the same person I was when I was married to Marcus. I'm someone who knows her worth now." "So you're saying you won't come to the reunion?" "I'm saying much more than that, Dad. But we'll have to talk about the rest when you're ready to have a real conversation about what family means." I hung up feeling something I hadn't experienced in months: power. For the first time since my divorce, I wasn't trying to manage other people's reactions or minimize the inconvenience of my choices. I was simply standing in my truth and letting others decide how they wanted to respond to it. The family reunion was still 2 weeks away, but the real revelation was just beginning. The morning after my conversation with Dad, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. Word had apparently spread through the family network about our phone call, and the reactions ranged from supportive to outraged to confused. My phone was buzzing so constantly that I finally turned it off and went for a long walk through Portland's Forest Park to clear my head. When I returned home and turned my phone back on, one message stood out from all the others. It was from my grandmother, my dad's mother, who at 87 rarely used her cell phone for anything beyond emergency calls. "Sarah, dear, I don't understand all this nonsense about you not coming to the reunion. You come to my house Saturday at 2 p.m. We need to talk. Love, Grandma Rose." Grandma Rose had always been the family's unofficial mediator, the one person whose authority nobody questioned. She'd raised 6 children during the Depression, buried a husband and 2 sons, and maintained her dignity and strength through decades of family drama. When Grandma Rose said we need to talk, people listened. I called her back immediately, and her familiar voice brought tears to my eyes. "Grandma, I got your message." "Good. Now tell me what's really going on with this reunion business. Your father gave me some cock and bull story about you needing space, but Rachel called and told me a very different version." I found myself telling Grandma Rose the whole story. Marcus's affair, the divorce, my family's reaction, and Dad's text message uninviting me from the reunion. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making small disapproving sounds that I recognized from my childhood. "Well," she said when I finished, "that's the most ridiculous thing I've heard in my 87 years. You're coming to the reunion, young lady, and that's final. Grandma, I appreciate your support, but I don't think Dad is going to change his mind. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to be somewhere I'm not welcome. Sarah, listen to me carefully. This farm has been in our family for 4 generations. Your great-great-grandfather homesteaded this land in 1889. Every summer for 32 years, we've gathered here to celebrate our family, our history, and our connection to each other. No one, not your father, not anyone, gets to decide who belongs here except me, and you belong here." The conviction in her voice was absolute, but I still hesitated. "Grandma, I don't want to cause more problems." "Honey, you didn't cause these problems. Your father did when he decided that his opinion of your personal choices was more important than his love for his daughter. Now, are you coming to see me Saturday or not? I'll be there." That Saturday, I drove the 3 hours from Portland to Bend, then another 30 minutes out to the family farm. The property was exactly as I remembered it. Rolling fields bordered by pine forests, the old white farmhouse with its wraparound porch, the red barn where we'd played hide-and-seek as children. Seeing it brought back a flood of memories from happier times, when family meant unconditional love rather than conditional approval. Grandma Rose met me on the porch, and despite her small stature, her hug felt like being wrapped in strength and safety. At 87, she was still sharp as a tack, with silver hair she wore in a neat bun and bright blue eyes that missed nothing. "Come in, dear. I made your favorite cookies." We sat in her kitchen, surrounded by the same yellow curtains and ceramic roosters that had decorated the room since my childhood, eating snickerdoodles and drinking sweet tea while she caught me up on family news. But I could tell she had something on her mind beyond casual conversation. "Sarah," she finally said, setting down her teacup with deliberate precision, "I want you to know that I'm proud of you for leaving that husband of yours. A man who can't keep his promises isn't worth the paper his marriage certificate is printed on." The blunt assessment surprised me. Grandma Rose had always been diplomatic about family conflicts, rarely taking sides or offering direct opinions about people's personal choices. "Thank you, Grandma. That means more to me than you know. I should have said it sooner. I should have called you when I heard about the divorce and told you then. But I'm old-fashioned, and I thought your parents would handle it properly. I was wrong." She reached across the table and took my hand in her weathered ones. "Your grandfather cheated on me once, back in 1963. Did you know that?" I stared at her in shock. Grandpa Joe had been the model of integrity in my mind, the kind of man who treated my grandmother like a queen until the day he died. He had a brief affair with a woman he met at a business conference. Thought I didn't know, but wives always know. I had 3 choices: pretend it never happened, leave him, or make him face what he'd done and decide if our marriage was worth fighting for. What did you choose? I chose option 3. I told him I knew. I told him exactly how disappointed I was in his character, and I told him that if he ever disrespected our marriage again, I'd take the children and leave. He spent the next 27 years proving to me that he deserved a second chance. She squeezed my hand gently. But that was my choice, Sarah. And if I had chosen to leave, it would have been the right choice too. The point is, it was my choice to make, not anyone else's. I felt tears starting to form. Dad thinks I gave up too easily, that I should have tried harder to save my marriage. Your father is a good man, but he's a fool sometimes. He thinks that because he and your mother have been happily married for 32 years, he understands how all marriages work. He doesn't understand that not every man is capable of learning from his mistakes the way your grandfather was. We talked for another hour about marriage, family, and the courage it takes to choose your own path even when others disapprove. As I prepared to leave, Grandma Rose walked me to my car and surprised me with another revelation. "I want you to know that the reunion is happening whether your father likes it or not. I've called everyone who said they weren't coming, and I've made it clear that they're welcome here regardless of what your father thinks. This is my house, my land, and my family gathering." "Grandma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I'm 87 years old, Sarah. I don't have time for family politics or hurt feelings or whatever nonsense your father thinks he's accomplishing. I want my family together, all of my family. And that includes you. She handed me an envelope with my name written in her careful handwriting. This is your official invitation to the reunion. From me to you. I hope you'll come. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note on her personal stationery. Sarah Henderson is cordially invited to attend the 32nd annual Henderson Family Reunion. Your presence is requested, and your courage is celebrated. With love and pride, Grandma Rose. I hugged her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender and vanilla that always clung to her clothes. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, dear. And Sarah, bring whatever news you have to share. I have a feeling there's something you haven't told me yet. As I drove back to Portland, I realized that Grandma Rose was right. I did have news to share. The question was whether I was ready to announce my plans to move to Costa Rica at a family gathering that was already controversial. But maybe that was exactly the right time to share it. Maybe it was time to stop hiding my dreams and start celebrating them, regardless of how others might react. The reunion was 1 week away, and I finally knew what I was going to do. The Henderson family reunion proceeded exactly as Grandma Rose had promised. Nearly everyone came. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends who had heard about the drama and wanted to show their support. The only notable absences were my parents and my brother Jake, who had apparently decided that if they couldn't control the guest list, they wouldn't attend at all. I arrived with a folder full of photos from my school in Portland and a heart full of excitement about sharing my news. When Grandma Rose asked me to speak after dinner, I stood before my assembled family, people who had chosen love over judgment, inclusion over exclusion. Thank you all for being here despite the circumstances, I began. 6 months ago, I made the difficult decision to leave my marriage after my husband's infidelity. Some family members saw this as a failure, but I see it as the beginning of discovering who I really am. I paused, looking around at the supportive faces. In September, I'm moving to Costa Rica to teach English to children in rural communities. It's a 1-year commitment that represents everything I've learned about choosing courage over comfort. The room erupted in applause and congratulations. Cousin Rachel wiped away tears, and even stern Uncle Frank was beaming with pride. Later, as we cleaned up, Grandma Rose pulled me aside. So, that's what understood meant. You understood that you deserved better than conditional love. Exactly. And I understood that real family supports your growth, even when they don't understand your choices. 3 months later, I was settling into my new life in Costa Rica when I received a text from Dad. I was wrong. I'm proud of you. Love, Dad. I smiled and typed back, understood. Love you too. Sometimes the most powerful response to rejection is simply living your best life. My father had expected my understood to be acceptance of his terms. Instead, it became my declaration of independence, and ultimately the catalyst for our family learning what unconditional love really means.